UFC 313 went down this weekend, which means it's time for me to go through and play matchmaker for every single fighter on the main card, the winners and the losers, just talking through who I would book them up against next. If you guys enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe, let me hear your thoughts. If you agree with these matchups, let me hear it. If you disagree, would love to hear what you guys are thinking. But let's just dive right into the guys in the main event here. Magomed Ankalaev wins a very close decision against Alex Pereira. I think this is a no-brainer. You got to run this one back. It kind of makes sense from pretty much every perspective. First off, it was a close fight. If Alex Pereira won on the scorecards, I don't think it would have been the craziest thing in the world. So a close title fight, there's always going to be some argument to run that one back. There's also just not another clear top contender. Like, it's not like there's some guy out there who's truly getting robbed by not getting the next title shot. Pereira was kind of running through the dudes at the top. The division needs to rebuild a little bit, get some contenders up there. And then also just from like a star power perspective, Alex Pereira is clearly the biggest star in the weight class. I mean, he honestly might be the biggest active star in the UFC right now with, Conor McGregor obviously not fighting and then John Jones also being very, very inactive. So if you can get your biggest star in another title fight, especially when the circumstances kind of make sense, you have to do it. So Alex Pereira, Magomed Ankalaev 2, that is the fight to make, and I do think that is the fight that the UFC is going to make. And then looking at the guys in the co-main event here, starting off with the winner, Justin Gaethje, I know Dana White called for, him potentially getting a title shot against Islam Makhachev. I don't think that should be the fight. I'm going with Justin Gaethje taking on Arman Tsarukyan, and I'll just kind of lay out what I think they should do at lightweight here. I think for the title, the fact that this isn't like a lock doesn't make any sense to me. It should be Islam Makhachev taking Ilia Topuria. I really would not understand an argument for anything other than this fight. This is an all-time great matchup. That is the fight that should take place here. So for the title, I'd go Islam taking on Ilia. Then I would have Holloway taking on Oliveira. That just seems like an absolute banger. And then Justin Gaethje taking on Arman Tsarukyan. I will say Gaethje kind of gets like the short end of the stick here because Holloway, Oliveira, both like huge stars. Islam, Ilia, obviously that's a title fight. And then Gaethje has to fight like the super tough #1 ranked guy in the world who's also not a huge name. But I think this could be a potential #1 contender fight. Either guy picks up an impressive win. They could certainly be fighting for the title next. Arman's on a 4-fight win streak, had pretty much already earned that title shot. And then obviously had the back injury, had to pull out the day before. So I understand it's probably not the most like optimal spot for Gaethje. Obviously, if he can get a title shot, he should go for it. But I just don't understand giving Gaethje a title shot over Ilia Topuria. To me, it would just be pretty disappointing. So Gaethje, Arman is the direction I'd be leaning there. And then for the loser of the co-main event, Rafael Fiziev, I think he should rematch Mateusz Gamrot. I honestly don't know if someone's had like a better 3-fight losing streak or someone who's maybe even gained stock in a 3-fight losing streak, right? He had the super close, super fun first fight with Gaethje. Then he fights Gamrot, loses, but it's because he blows out his knee. So no one really cares in terms of like docking him for that loss. And then he comes in here, puts on a war with Gaethje on short notice, comes in off that knee injury, looks great, looks solid. So he's on a 3-fight losing streak, but I really don't think his stock is down at all. I think he looked good against Justin Gaethje, kind of faded towards the end, but not, super unexpected given the fact that it was short notice, like under 2 weeks when he took this fight. Mateusz Gamrot is coming off a split decision loss to Dan Hooker. Gamrot's ranked number 8. Fiziev is ranked number 11. It makes sense for Gamrot to fight back. And then for Fiziev, even though he's number 11, I don't think this fight should be used against him, right? Like, he 100% did the UFC a solid, stepping up, taking this very tough fight on short notice. I think Fiziev Gamrot running that one back makes a lot of sense here. And then continuing on with the lightweight weight class, we have Ignacio Bahamondes, who submitted Jalin Turner. And I think a matchup against Renato Moicano makes some sense here. This was 100% Bahamondes' biggest win of his career. He should be heading into the rankings at number 13. That was where Jalin Turner was. He should just be taking his spot. And then coming off a win, an impressive performance, should be fighting up in the rankings. Renato Moicano is currently ranked number 10. He is coming off the Islam Makhachev loss. So, Moicano was kind of set to fight up against Beneil. The whole shakeup happens, Arman pulls out. So I don't love the fact that Moicano is now kind of losing an opportunity or fighting back because he did step up and do the UFC a solid. But, I still think this is the fight to make here. It's a striker versus grappler matchup, Bahamondes being the striker, Moicano being the grappler. Although we did see Bahamondes showcase the jiu-jitsu in this most recent matchup. I just think it's a step up that makes sense. For Moicano, not the craziest thing in the world to have him fight back a few spots. And the guy he was supposed to fight on that card, Beneil Dariush, I have him booked in a different matchup that I'll get into a little bit later on. And then the loser of this matchup, Jalin Turner, if he is going to fight again, which it sounds like he's announced his retirement. Now, MMA retirements notoriously, short-lived and typically don't stick. But I will say, if he's not mentally in it and he wants to retire, he 100% should. It's certainly not the sport to be messing around in if you're not, 100% focused and mentally in the right space. But if Jalin Turner is going to fight again, I think he's 100% talented enough to. I think a fight against Ludovit Klein makes sense. He's on a tough run on paper. He's lost 4 of his last 5. But this most recent loss against Ignacio is really the only clear-cut loss. His other ones were close decisions against Dan Hooker and Mateusz Gamrot, both top 10 guys in the world. And then the Renato Moicano loss where he nearly finished him in the first round. So Jalin Turner is 100% skilled and talented enough to compete against the best guys in the world. But if he's not mentally there, should walk away. Ludovit Klein, though, on a really nice winning streak here, actually has beaten Ignacio Bahamondes on that streak, and I do think he's deserving of a shot in the top 15. And honestly, if Turner retires and gets removed from the rankings, it's possible that Klein just gets bumped into that 15 spot because he really is just right on the outside looking in. And then shifting over to the one women's fight we got on this main card, not a great overall fight, not super entertaining. For the winner here, Amanda Lemos, in these matchups, I'm typically blaming the loser because if someone's going to just let you control them on the ground, I think it's up to the person on the bottom to kind of make a move, potentially be reckless to get out of that spot. So for Lemos here, I think she should be taking on Tatiana Saurez. She defended her number 5 ranking. She's certainly not getting a title shot off that win, especially with the history with Zhang Weili, the fact that she was just completely dominated for 5 rounds by Weili. And then when you're looking at the rankings, the number 1, 3, and 4 strawweights are all booked. So the only person available is Tatiana Saurez. I kind of thought Tatiana might retire after the Zhang Weili loss. Just seems like someone who's pretty much championship or bust, and she was not competitive in that fight. But she has not announced her retirement. If she's going to stick around, continue taking fights, I think this is the matchup that makes sense. Lemos fighting up after a win. Tatiana Saurez fighting back after a loss. It will be a test for Lemos. She's someone who has struggled in the grappling department against Zhang Weili, against Virna Jandiroba. Tatiana Saurez is certainly going to challenge her there, so it is a step up in competition, but I think it makes sense based on the rankings. And then the loser of that matchup, Iasmin Lucindo, I think she should take on Angela Hill. It was a rough showing. She only landed 4 significant strikes. Seems like it was a little too quick of a step up in competition. She is still only 23 years old. Angela Hill, currently ranked number 13. She's won 3 of her last 4. I think it's a more appropriate next opponent. Angela Hill's kind of been the gatekeeper of this women's strawweight weight class. So if you get through Angela Hill, you can continue climbing the rankings, and that's the situation she's set up in here. And then the final fight, final matchup, we have Mauricio Ruffy with a huge win over Bobby Green. I mean, amazing wheel kick KO, probably, the highlight of the night. I think he should get the fight that he called for. He wanted a main event, Fight Night main event against Beneil Dariush, and I'm fine with making that happen. We saw Paddy Pimblett get the Michael Chandler fight after a Bobby Green win. Why can't Mauricio Ruffy, get that big name treatment after a win against Bobby? Dariush, coming off of back-to-back losses, was booked to fight Moicano. That one, fell apart when Moicano got upgraded to the title shot. I just think this is a big opportunity for a young, fun prospect. The fact that they were giving him Bobby Green, I think that was kind of a setup to where if he wins, now he's getting a crack at the rankings. Why not let him try to crack into the top 10 with a Beneil Dariush fight? I think it's an interesting matchup. Would certainly test him, by far his toughest opponent, but I would like to see it. He called the shot. Would like to see this one happen. And then the final guy here, King Green. I think he should take on Esteban Ribovics. This is a striker versus striker matchup. I think it's less tough of a matchup for Bobby Green. Not saying he's going to win. I'd actually probably pick Ribovics in this matchup, but the Ruffy fight, that's a tough matchup on paper. Someone who manages range really well. Bobby Green, someone who's going to want to, get his striking going, push a pace, and you're just really not going to be able to do that without getting clipped against Ruffy, and we kind of saw that, right? He wasn't really able to get anything going. For Ribovics, he is certainly a very good striker, but they're both going to go out there. They're going to throw a ton of volume. Ribovic can certainly hit hard. He's dangerous, but he's not known for having nuclear power. Bobby Green's been finished in 3 of his last 4 fights, but really strong competition. Jalin Green, Paddy the Batty, Mauricio Ruffy. Ribovics was on a 3-fight win streak and then a split decision loss in his last fight. I just think that's a super fun fight on paper. Certainly a potential fight of the night matchup there. But that's going to wrap it up for my post-UFC 313 matchmaking. Let me know your thoughts. If you have some different matchups, would love to hear them. But thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.